Joining us now for tonight's big close-up is Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick, who sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Thank you.
Senator, how concerned should the American public be about this rising threat from Islamic extremists? You know, it felt like we maybe put this in the rear view several years ago and focused on other threats, but it appears to be rearing its head once again. You know, what's your sense of this trend and how concerned we should be?
Well, I think we should be very concerned. On October 2023, there were really two surprise attacks. There was a surprise attack on Israel from Hamas coming in and butchering 1,200 Israelis and Americans. But there was also a surprise attack of anti-Semitism, which we all know lurked beneath the surface, but it came about in such a profound and violent way. And we see that in America, we see it around the world, and we need to fight back against both the on-the-ground terrorist threat with ISIS and other terrorist organizations, and we need to fight against anti-Semitism at home and abroad. And this is just another example on the first day of Hanukkah. What an absolute tragedy. And we need to stay on offense against both of those surprise attacks. And this is what global intifada means.
Senator, so, I mean, I'm keeping score here just over the last couple of weeks. We've got National Guardsmen attacked in D.C. We've got National Guardsmen killed in Syria. We've got what happened in Australia. We don't yet know the person of interest in at Brown, but it looks like, you know, the coincidence of it being the first day of Hanukkah is at least alarming. There's this issue of anti-Semitism connected to the Hamas-Israel conflict. And then there's this larger problem of radical Islamic terror. Now, not every Muslim is a terrorist, but just every radical Islamic terrorist is doing it in the name of Islam. I fought this war that lasted 20 years in two different countries. I saw Afghanistan fall in a very difficult way. It's not even where do we point the blame, it's where do we move forward. I mean, we fought this for at least 20 years, and we're back to square one. We're just waiting on another 9/11. What's changed and what needs to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, unfortunately, not enough has changed. You fought in two wars in two countries against this, and it's the kind of thing where we have to continue to fight evil with force. At home, that means we have to have moral clarity. And we can't let anti-Semitic behavior, political violence, political hatred prosper. We need to fight back and push back. Political officials need to push back. We need to have a strong defense and support all of our communities. Abroad, we need to support our allies and fight day in and day out. And I think the Trump administration is doing this to stay on offense, because if we stay on offense abroad, that makes it harder for that terrorist, radical terrorism to attack us here at home. Unfortunately, it's an evil world and a dangerous world, and we need to stay on offense to keep Americans safe.
All right, Senator, it's Kennedy. Speaking of offense, two U.S. soldiers, as was just mentioned, and a U.S. civilian service interpreter were killed by ISIS militants in Syria just yesterday. President Trump is vowing to retaliate. You're talking about offense. What does that kind of offense look like to you?
Well, listen, the American military is the greatest, most advanced military in the world. We need to use that power very selectively, and I know I've seen and talked to the president about how he's done that on a number of occasions. Syria is a particularly complicated situation because we have an opportunity to support a leader in al-Shara who can potentially bring stability to the region. But one of the things he has to do is to be able to bring together and stop this internal violence. And of course, if American soldiers are going to be supporting that effort, they need to have the security. So I know the president is weighing how to best go after these radical elements that are bringing violence to Syria. But I think he'll do that in a very thoughtful and discreet way. And he's been reluctant, I think appropriately so, to put men and women in uniform from the United States into harm's way. I think he's used the military in a very selective and strategic way that's accomplished the goals while minimizing the burden put on the American military.
Well, with all due respect, there's hundreds in Syria, and 3 of them just died. So that was men and women in uniform in harm's way. And I'm not saying it's the wrong thing, but I don't want to sit here and watch us creep into another war like the one I fought, like I brought up. And I think we need more than we'll retaliate to understand what we're trying to do there. There are a lot of Americans that say, why don't we just let these groups kill each other and see who comes from the ashes? I understand that 9/11 is sort of a response to that, but at the same time, fighting them on their ground doesn't work either.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a real tension about it. Of course, the key is to sort of keep them on their back foot and not let them be able to promote violence here in the United States. But when American soldiers are deployed, men and women in uniform, they are, even if they're not engaged in offensive military operations, they are in harm's way. And so it's a delicate balancing act. And I think Syria makes it particularly complicated because there's parts of Syria that are under control of al-Shara. Yeah. It's a balancing act. I think the president's shown a lot of wisdom in getting that balance right so far.
Senator, moving from Syria to the escalating conflict in Venezuela, the U.S. seized a tanker on Wednesday in the Caribbean Sea that was carrying oil from Venezuela. The Trump administration alleges that it was being used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. So are you concerned we're inching closer to war with Venezuela? We have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, just real briefly, the president campaigned and I campaigned on stopping the flow of fentanyl into our country. It killed 100,000 Americans last year, 4,000 Pennsylvanians. So I think using the military in a very discreet way to take those narco-terrorists out makes a lot of sense. This is a sanctioned ship. This is a rogue state and a narco-terrorist state. And so I think this is appropriate. But I also take the point that we need to be careful not to get drawn into a situation where American troops are going to be put in a lot of danger. I think the American people have spoken out loud and clear that they want to be very careful about that.
Senator Dave McCormick, thank you so much for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of your Sunday night.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.